Good evening, and thanks for always keeping a date with us on the program Transforming Agriculture in Nigeria, a program sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development to advance agricultural development in Nigeria through information dissemination on the opportunities in the sector. I'm your guide, Gabriel Ojile. The 45th regular meeting of the National Council on Agriculture and Rural Development took place in Jos, the Plateau State capital, from the 13th of September 2022 running through to the 16th. The major highlights of the meeting and the effects of the outcomes in developing agriculture in Nigeria will be our focus in this episode. But in our usual tradition, we will start the program with a news segment, coming up shortly after the break. Keep watching.
That will provide the necessary policy direction that will truly position agriculture as the mainstay of our economy.
The federal government is removing obstacles and offering opportunities for self-employment, wealth creation, and food security in the Nigeria's agricultural sector.
Think farming, think agriculture.
Watch Transforming Agriculture in Nigeria, showing on NTA Fridays at 8:30 p.m.
In the diary tonight, Federal Ministry of Agriculture to support the establishment of processing centers in rural communities. Also, Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development signed MOU with U.S. government to tackle climate change. Details of these and other stories will come your way shortly. In a bid to ensure food security, employment generation and wealth creation, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development is supporting the establishment of over 100 processing centers across the country.
Policy to the
Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mahmoud Abubakar, disclosed this during the 2022 annual meeting of the National Council on Agriculture and Rural Development, which took place in Jos. Abubakar also announced the approval of intervention funds by President Muhammadu Buhari for the completion of 10 mega rice mills that are ongoing in Jigawa, Kano, Adamawa, Niger, Kaduna, Gombe, Ekiti, Ogun, Bayelsa, and Abuja.
The ministry is committed to supporting the establishment of over 100 processing centers in the rural communities across the country under the Green Imperatives project of a private-driven mechanization program. We also hope to vigorously develop clusters, rural nodal centers, and rural cottage industries, as well as establish 8 special agro-industrial processing zones across the country.
Also speaking during the occasion, the Plateau State Governor Simon Bakola Long appreciated the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development for choosing Plateau State to host the event, as well as citing agricultural intervention programs in the state.
Let me therefore use this opportunity to express my gratitude for the patronage and the collaboration that Plateau State has enjoyed from the federal government over time, particularly under the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. Outside hosting the National Council on Agriculture and Rural Development, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development was in Plateau State last year to flag off wheat production and declare the state as a center of excellence for wheat production in the country due to its suitability to produce 3 cycles in a year.
Federal Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development has signed a Memorandum of Understanding MOU with the United States government to address the negative effect of climate change on agriculture. The MOU was signed in Abuja during a courtesy visit by Mr. John Kerry, the United States Presidential Envoy on climate change, to the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development.
I appreciate that.
Speaking during the courtesy visit, the U.S. envoy sought the collaboration of the ministry to address the effect of climate change in the world, especially in the agricultural sector in Nigeria.
I'm really pleased that you were willing to join this initiative in Glasgow, and now here, when I'm in Abuja visiting, we're able to witness you signing this agreement.
Responding, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mahmoud Abubakar, highlighted the efforts made by the government of Nigeria to contain the effects of climate change on agriculture. These include the development of organic farming, fixing grazing system for dedicated pasture, solar dryer and cold storage for vegetable, construction and rehabilitation of water harvesting system, among others.
Your Excellency, let me say Nigeria is very committed, especially this current administration of President Muhammadu Buhari in agricultural production. Since his coming, really has spent more, has invested more money in agri than any other previous administration, and he intends to continue doing that. And this ministry, we're willing and ready, and today we'll be signing the aim, and we'll be happy to do so right here, right now.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
The Executive Director of Cocoa Research Institute of Nigeria, Patrick Adebola, has attributed the decline in cocoa production in Nigeria to the lack of access to planting materials, lack of interest, and liberalization policy, among others. He disclosed this when he appeared before the Senate Committee on Finance. This, in effect, he said, has placed Nigeria behind Indonesia, Cote d'Ivoire, and Ghana in global cocoa ranking.
You may recall that the IMF advised the major cocoa producing countries around the 80s that we should liberalize the sector. Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana did not fully liberalize their sector. Nigeria went ahead and liberalized the sector. It becomes free for all. And that is when our problem started. We used to have the Nigerian Cocoa Board, where the board is responsible for the regulation of everything in terms of the cocoa sector. Where is the board today? The board was disbanded because of the advice of the International Monetary Agency, the IMF. Now the sector has been liberalized. It now becomes free for all. We don't control what goes on in the sector, and therefore the farmers started losing interest because they don't get much more money.
Reacting to the presentation, Senator Akenyulure Patrick Ayo urged the committee and the Federal Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development to intensify effort to address rural infrastructure as well as making inputs available to cocoa farmers.
After the cocoa is ripe for harvest, to transport these things to the cities is a major problem. Mr. Chairman, I think this committee has to work with Minister of Agri and with this man who is in charge to give us statistics that will help this committee to assist them.
The National Council on Agriculture and Rural Development is the highest decision-making body in the agricultural sector in Nigeria. The 45th meeting of the council, which took place in Jos, had the theme Strengthening Agricultural Value Chain Development Process for Food Security and Economic Development. We will take the highlights of what transpired during the meeting and the impact it will have in the development of agriculture, job creation, and the nation's economy at large. Sit back as we unfold the detail.
The 45th meeting of the National Council on Agriculture and Rural Development took place at Langfield Leisure Park in Jos from 12th to 16th of September 2022. The opening ceremony was graced by dignitaries. Among them were Governor of Plateau State, Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, senators, members of House of Representatives, commissioners of agriculture, permanent secretaries and directors from the various state offices, staff of the ministry, development partners, farmers, amongst others. The Plateau State Cultural Dancing Troupe was present at the event. They thrilled participants with acrobatic dance and displays. This year's event explored the theme towards strengthening agricultural value chain development process for food security and economic development in Nigeria.
Of 25.8.
At the opening ceremony of the occasion, The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mohammed Mahmoud Abubakar, emphasized the natural endowments Nigeria is blessed with and which supports agricultural practices. Quoting the latest reports from the National Bureau of Statistics, the minister said agriculture contributed 23.5% to the nation's GDP in the second quarter of 2022, topping other sectors, a development he believes the ministry will improve on by enhancing the agricultural value chain.
To improve on performance, we are strengthening the linkage between research, agriculture, and industry by intensifying our commodity value chain development process. This is being guided by the new framework of the National Agricultural Technology and Innovation Policy, NATIP 2022 to 2027, launched in August 2022, which seeks to modernize the agricultural sector in line with the changing global food systems and supply chains.
On his part, the governor of Plateau State, Simon Bakolalong, said the state government, in collaboration with the federal government, will continue to implement the livestock transformation plan, among other initiatives to strengthen agricultural value chain development.
As a government, we have over the last 7 years given enormous attention to agriculture by ensuring the provision of farm inputs such as tractors, fertilizers, chemicals, improved seedlings, and many more towards ensuring that our people benefit from the natural endowments of the state. Our farmers have been empowered through the cooperative societies and farmer associations in the production of many crops and assorted vegetables that are unique to our environment.
The chairman, Senate Committee on Agriculture, Senator Mohammed Bima Enegi, who was present at the event, pledged the support of the National Assembly through policies and laws that will strengthen agricultural value chain process, while advocating for proper funding of research institutes to brace up to the task of developing equipment for agricultural mechanization and processing.
The time has come for our research institutes to be heard and seen. You cannot remain at the background. We must adequately fund the research institutions and facilitate their linkages. This is also why I am strongly in support of adequate funding of the National Center for Agricultural Mechanization and their patronage by all government agencies.
Thank you very much for declaring this technical.
The Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, Ernest Afolabi Umahihe, who was earlier represented by the Director, Agricultural Mechanization and Climate Change Management, Shehu Tijani Bello, set the stage for the technical session by stressing the enormous benefits of strengthening the agricultural value chain and urged stakeholders to deliberate on strategies that would help the process.
The impact of a strengthened agricultural value chain is enormous, as it will contribute to food security, increased productivity, efficiency, engender diversification, generate higher incomes, and reduces post-harvest losses, and above all, generate employment opportunities.
During the technical session, Professor Paul Amaze from the University of Jos presented a lead paper titled Strengthening Agricultural Value Chain in Nigeria, Way Forward. In it, he harped on the need to establish processing companies across the 6 geopolitical zones, collaboration with other sectors, addressing infrastructural challenges, among other steps.
We have to invest in technologies that enhance, increase production and productivity, energy, improve seeds, fertilizer, so on. Then we also have to take agriculture as a business, not as a livelihood. Seeing agriculture as a business which focus on government-enabled but private sector-led engagement as the primary growth driver of the sector. I'm happy to see that at this council that we have some private sector players. They are supposed to be in the driving seat. Those in government will give the enabling policies for them to be able to perform their function. See agriculture as an instrument for transforming the economy, to eradicate poverty, create wealth, and enhance food security. So the policy instruments should ensure that the commercialization of agriculture has the necessary technologies, financial services, input supply chain, and market linkages.
Another paper was presented on the use of nuclear techniques for processing of food and agricultural products and its contribution to Nigerian economic diversification by Professor Yusuf Aminu Ahmed, who is the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, Nigerian Atomic Energy Commission. He was represented by Mustafa Tajuddin, Deputy Director, Gamma Irradiation Technology. He emphasized the importance of the use of nuclear energy for processing and preservation as a mechanism to prevent post-harvest losses in the agricultural value chain.
The process involves exposing the products to carefully control amount of ionizing radiation to achieve the following objective. We have a sprouting inhibition in yam. We have yam, we keep yam for some months, it will start sprouting. If you bring it to the facility is capable of stopping this sprouting. We have inactivation of microorganisms such as bacteria, mold, and other spoilage. Then we have insect disruption of grains. If we look at beans, we buy beans today, we keep it at home for about 2-3 months. It will start bringing weevil. If you bring it to this facility, the facility is capable of killing all the developmental stages of these weevils.
The program is Transforming Agriculture in Nigeria, and we are bringing you highlights of discussions in the just concluded 45th meeting of the National Council on Agriculture and Rural Development. The focus of the meeting was on strengthening the agricultural value chain process for food security and economic diversification. Stakeholders in the sector presented over 60 memorandums, which were adopted by the Council to reshape agriculture-related projects and development of the value chain. Let's also get some highlights from the presentation, looking at the impact of some of the memorandums on the agricultural sector.
The National Council on Agriculture and Rural Development comprises the Ministers of Agriculture and Rural Development, Commissioners of Agriculture from the 36 states of the Federation, Permanent Secretaries of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, alongside his colleagues from the states and top officials in the ministry.
So if Council is approving our recommendation.
The 45th National Council on Agriculture and Rural Development was chaired by the Honorable Minister of State, Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mustafa Baba Shehuri. The chairman during the event said that the intensification of efforts by stakeholders is to grow the agricultural sector, diversify the nation's economy, ensure food security through public-private partnership.
As stakeholders, we hope to use infrastructure technology and entrepreneurship as veritable tools for exploring agricultural potentials, strengthening inter- and intrastate sectoral linkages, and empowering socio-economic development in the country.
Some of the memorandums which were presented from states, agencies and departments of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development include a proposal for empowering of rural economies for prosperity with agriculture and renewable energy, the need for hazard allowance for agricultural practitioners in line with veterinary services requirements, the need to establish a fisheries training and development center for training of modern fish farming techniques and a facility support program for artisanal fishermen in Zamfara. Proposal for support to the Ogbono value chain, mango value chain, amongst others.
To threaten
For the Federal Department of Agriculture, there is need to give equal attention to all the value chains of agriculture, be it farming, processing, and marketing.
We want the Council to approve the establishment of a National Food Security Task Force to provide rapid response to food security challenges. Just as it has happened during the pandemic, a lot of efforts were put in place hurriedly to see how we can mitigate the effect of that pandemic. The second prayer is establishment of 1 trillion naira agricultural development fund for intervention across agricultural value chains. That is to say, at any time, at any point in time, if there are crises either of flood or any natural disaster whatsoever, there is a fund.
On the need to establish Fisheries Training Development Center, it was postulated that it will no doubt enhance fish production and its value chain in Nigeria.
Support the fisheries and aquaculture development and establish fisheries training and development center, FTDC, in at least 3 senatorial zones in Zamfara State, where fish farmers will be trained on modern fish farming techniques to reduce youth unemployment through small and medium-scale businesses along the fish value chain. 2. Support the state government to establish a support program for the artisanal fishermen who will be trained at the FTDCs and be supported with loan facilities on safe handling, modern processing methods, preservation, and storage facilities.
The need to enhance mechanization as a means of strengthening the agricultural value chain was also part of the memo adopted. Speaking in an interview, the Executive Director, National Center for Agricultural Mechanization, Ilorin, advocates government support to farmers and the need for farmers to form associations to access tractors.
Farmer can gain access through cooperative, because in Nigeria you can see that farmers are such poor. They are poor, and because of this, the government, state governments, the farmers, they reside in states. The state government needs to help them by subsidizing the cost of this equipment to them, because they don't have enough money. And because of that, and in the case that the government is not helping them, they need to gather together and form what you call cooperative group. So that cooperative group, on that note, they will be able to share their input in investment and also share risk.
A memo from Anambra State encouraged increased production of insect larvae. The representative of the Anambra State Ministry of Agriculture speaks on the advantages insect larvae production could have, especially on the cost of poultry feed in Nigeria.
We discovered that it has almost the same protein content with fish meal, and so it's now better for use in both livestock and fish production. And that's why we're saying that council should approve the production centers.
The Federal Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development is the instrument the federal government is using to reposition agriculture and make it an alternative source of revenue for this administration, and this is primarily because of the nation's huge potentials in the sector. In this quest, the ministry has made a lot of breakthroughs, introduced policies, innovations that have the capacity to change the fortunes of the nation and farmers for the better. We shall be celebrating these innovations and successes in a new segment which we have created for that purpose. Tonight, we shall start with an extract from the minister's speech at the 45th Council meeting, where he gave a scorecard of some of the ministry's achievements. Keep watching.
We have facilitated the production and distribution of 920 metric tons of cashew, sesame, sorghum, maize, rice, as well as the distribution of 67,000 liters of agrochemicals to 1,397,469 farmers, and equally 14,785 agricultural equipment, material, tools, groundnut processing machines, rice mills, cashew processing, etc., etc. We also trained 153,124 women and youth on various agricultural crop, fishery, and livestock value chain.
This is the much we can take on today's episode of the program. Join us again next week, same time, same station, as we bring you more stories from the 45th meeting of the National Council on Agriculture and Rural Development. Have a great weekend, and bye for now.